The Process, a podcast about creativity and experimental music. In the world of experimental music, outcomes and accolades for creators can be uncertain and at times seem far and few between. Therefore, creators and practitioners of experimental music must embrace the one thing they will always have complete control over: the process. This podcast aims to understand this creative process by listening to new works and discussing them with their creators. Each episode focuses on one creator and their music. Understanding how and why they create can inform aspiring creatives and help audiences better understand and navigate experimental music. I'm Dr. Doug Bielmeyer, and I'll be your host as we explore the world of experimental music, creativity, and the human need to find purpose in their world and lives. This is The Process. The music of Anthony Donofrio reflects a deep interest in delicate and fragile treatments of time and gesture that are often interrupted or broken. Their work investigates the compositional intersection of music and experimental literature, specifically in the realm of nonlinearity and structural distortion. Anthony's music has been featured nationally and internationally by many wonderful, generous, and exceptionally talented people. Anthony teaches composition, theory, 20th century music history, and directs the New Music Ensemble at the University of Nebraska at Kearney. In addition, Anthony is also the director of the UNK New Music Series and Festival, which brings specialists in contemporary music to central Nebraska to present recitals, masterclasses, and lectures. Anthony holds a PhD in music composition from the University of Iowa. Past teachers include Frank Wiley, David Gomper, Paul Schoenfield, and John Easton. When spare time exists, Anthony enjoys book collecting, studying occultism, and cooking. A place I like to start is to ask you how the process for composing begins.
It's usually either sitting down with pencil and paper and just writing down ideas. It can happen anywhere. I have a dedicated workspace at home. Obviously, I have, my office at work. And then other times the idea strikes and the idea appears. And those can come from anything. Usually it comes from either a novel that I'm reading or a film that I'm watching, and more often than not, it has to do with time and some kind of distortion of that element. Usually what I do is I write down the idea in words and then set that aside. And then when I can come back to a desk with some staff paper, or recently I've been not using staff paper. I've been really into these just blank drawing books, and I'll just quickly throw down 5 lines for a staff if I need that, or and just kind of get that going. I need to get something going visually on a piece of paper so I can kind of see the temporal layout of it. And then from there, it begins. The next step is usually the piano to see. It's kind of odd. I go to the piano in the very beginning. Once I get the idea kind of sort of made, decide, do I like these sounds, or if it's more rhythmic based, do I like these rhythms? Do I like where I'm going? And if that's a yes or a sort of yes, then great. And then I kind of just pile it all onto paper before checking in again. I like to get a ton of ideas down, and then the filtering process begins.
So that's really interesting. You have a concept, you have an idea, and you said you write it down in sort of a non-staff paper notebook. So sometimes it is the beginning of a composition. Is that a paragraph of text?
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes it'll literally be the piece will do this, then the piece will do that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And then sometimes it's just a comment about the end or the middle. Rarely is it the beginning. Usually it's just this is going to be something. Yeah. Something in the piece.
Because then you're kind of maybe inspired by, wouldn't it be cool if a piece ended this way?
Oh.
Or wouldn't it be cool if halfway through a piece, this type of moment happened? Like that could be a description, right? You're saying. And then do you find yourself then, when you're maybe in the process of writing another piece, ever going back to that and saying like, oh, this could be a great place to put that in it? Or is it, are they self-contained ideas? Are they modular, I guess is what I'm saying.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. What you just described is usually what happens when I'm writing like a single idea. So a quick example, not this piece, but a piece that I was writing for Amy Odell, who's a pianist in Atlanta. Yeah, she's great. She commissioned this huge work. So I wrote and I wrote and I wrote, and I got about 20 minutes down. And I was like, all right, great. And then next section, and I began this idea, and it just went, oh, the first 5 seconds of this idea, that's the beginning of the piece. So, so when you hear the piece, you hear this, this nice little idea, 20 minutes of something that's not related to it, and then it comes back again. I love doing that kind of stuff. So it does become modular in the compositional process. When the final piece is made, you may not hear it that way, but I'm not terribly concerned with telling you what to hear.
When I listen to a piece like 13 that you've written for chamber ensemble, I have this concept of sort of smaller modular cells, these things, and you're doing quite a bit with playing with arrival times. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this piece, 13? First of all, just tell us the instrumentation, who it was written for, or who we hear performing in the recording.
It was commissioned by the MidAmerican Center for Contemporary Music at Bowling Green, as well as the DMA conducting student, Alex Popovici. The piece was premiered at the 2019 Bowling Green New Music Festival. It is for flute, clarinet, alto sax, and those three double. So they double on alto, flute, bass, clarinet, and bari sax. Horn, trumpet, two percussion, piano, string quintet. So two violins, viola, cello, bass. The ensemble that premiered it is called the Terah, Terah. But yeah, that's who it was written for. That's the instrumentation.
A lot going on, and there's not a lot going on. So maybe talk a little bit about the impetus for creating this piece and maybe sort of what your goals were for the piece.
I wanted to really emphasize what I love about music, and that is the sounds of very thin, very delicate, very fragile timbres, and investigate a question. What happens when I break the line? What happens after? Does it rebuild itself? Where do the pieces fall? What shape, what image do they create after they've been broken or damaged? I love the idea of a single line or a single melody. If you were to listen to the piece all the way through and listen to that piano line that begins the piece and then it comes back, there's a single melody that weaves its way through the entire piece, but it shows up in little chunks. And I like to think of them as pillars or touchstones or, landmarks or something along the way of the piece.
I think this is a compliment, is that this piece takes a lot of patience. Patience for the players, patience for the audience, but then also you as the composer had to have quite a bit of patience to just not have a huge moment.
Yes. That I love that word. I rarely do all. I don't know if you have all 13 players playing at the same time.
That's the other thing. That's the temptation to just, where's the tutti? Like where's the, everyone just is banging on their instrument, right?
You would have that.
Yeah, right.
When I write polyphony, when I write rhythms, when I write those kinds of things, I am perfectly fine with two instruments starting together. I think that's a good thing of like, okay, you three people and go. But once that happens, I don't like the sound of simultaneous attacks within the beat or within the measure. So that's why you'll find a lot of 4/16 notes against a quintuplet or an eighth note triplet against a 16th note quintuplet. Where they will start together, but each voice has its own place within the beat. I don't really gravitate towards music that carves up the beat in 2 or 3 or 4. I like the things that superimpose a bunch of other divisions. And so when you take that idea, that's my usual approach to the individual beat or the individual measure, and you explode that out to the entire piece. Yeah, I'm not going to have a lot of times where everybody's doing a unison rhythm or the big Schwantner, here is the brass section.
Yeah. I will say though, there was one moment where it's a large brass moment. It's going to be this big moment. And then, like you said, they all come in together and then it sort of dissipates from there. So how does patience play into this piece?
I have to credit Tony Zlinick. He teaches tuba and composition at Capital University. Through a friend, I get a commission for a piece at Capital University. And it's kind of like this, where it was for a larger ensemble. It was like this in that I was doing these kinds of slow things, but I was doing it much more block-ish. And at the end of the piece, which it was only one of 2 pieces on the program, Tony looks over at me and he goes, "It's so nice to hear that kind of patient music." And that was the first time someone had ever said that. And when I was younger, I was a very impatient person. Ever since that performance, ever since that one comment, it's funny how just, back to the one idea or the one line in a book, that one comment was just, that makes a lot of sense. And ever since then, I've been trying to, okay, how can I do it here? How can I do it there? How can I do it, with this piece or with this teaching idea or with this whatever? And so when I sit down to write something, I never sit down with the intention of, well, how are we going to test patience today? It's there. It's kind of been absorbed into my ideas and my work. What I see, the result of that interest in patience, going with patience as a very, very background idea, can turn into those kinds of forms and those kinds of structures.
I've always seen it as a statement about virtuosity. There's the Paganini, the list, the lots of notes, very fast, executed very quickly, a lot going on, bombastic, big things. And there's also this virtuosity to having that restraint.
My training is in percussion, specifically four mallet marimba, which is kind of the land of the marimba jock. How many notes in this sequential sticking can I play? Where I know that it's much harder to enter in with a triangle beater on a very delicate surface very quietly than lay down velocities under 9 minutes. I'm not impressed by that. And you also asked about patience as a composer. There were many drafts of this piece, and they all were a filter of the version before. I had to try and take away that big moment.
I love what you said about the idea, and I've never thought of talent in this way. I've always thought of talent as a known commodity or a set commodity. Upon the day you arrived on this planet, you had X amount of talent. And I love the way that you described it as something that you gain through curiosity.
Yeah, Mozart may have had a lot of talent in that definition of, he was however old and he could do this, but he could do that. Whatever this is a very specific thing that we call musical talent. But could he have had that same amount of what we're calling talent in a different part of the world, in a different kind of music? And the answer could easily be no. So that kind of, bestowed idea on someone, like I'm born with this ability. I understand it, but I gravitate more towards the talent comes through work.
The thing that I look at it can be frustrating for someone who is a creative, someone who is creating, and they're sort of looking at these icons, these talented people, these like godlike composers, creators, and sometimes that can be really stifling. And so I think that's built into that question too. Like, do you believe in those icons? Do you believe in these people who were Messiah-like figures in creativity? And is that a healthy thing for, especially, an aspiring creator, an aspiring composer?
I think it's good to study the working habits of composers from the past. I think it's bad to try and copy that, emulate
them, yeah. Especially with Feldman or Mozart.
Yeah. Or it's important to just study it, take what you need from it, and then add that to your. Eleni Lilios talks about the composer's toolbox. Yeah. Add that to your collection, because if you try to just copy it, then you get stuck with this. Well, it worked for X. Why isn't it working for Y? It's like, well, because that's you. You got to do what's right for you. And a lot of times we fall into this either or binary, black or white kind of idea about almost everything. Like even the topic that we're talking about, this work versus talent, we associate the idea of the hard work as the composer having to lock themselves in a room. I don't know why we're obsessed with locking, but you can
because that's when the good writing happens in a locked room.
The door must be locked, right?
It must be locked.
Like, you can be as hardworking as Beethoven, and you don't have to be a grump, and you can be introverted or you can be extroverted without being like the stereotypical definition that we have to associate that with. So there's so much nuance to everything that when we deal with icons, it's kind of great. Take what you need from them, but then let them be where they were, because they were, as we know, they were humans, and they were terribly fallible, and they were terribly flawed.
Well, Anthony, thanks so much for being on the show today.
My pleasure. This has been great.
A lot of what you said actually resonated with me. So this was actually a really helpful and informative show for me, thinking about my own process. Before I let you go, where's a place that people can find out more about you and about your music? My
website, which is my last name, so DONOFRIO -music.com. It's a pretty bare bones website. You'll get a bio, you'll get an artist statement. The listen page has the recordings, but I also have a SoundCloud page, soundcloud.com/Anthony Donofrio. If you're interested in the UNK New Music series, that's on my UNK page, which is at unk.edu/music.
Thanks to Anthony for his music and his thoughts on patience and patience music. If you enjoyed this episode, check out other episodes in the series, and as always, like, subscribe, and leave a comment on your preferred podcasting app. I'm Dr. Doug Bielmeyer, and this has been The Process.